Let's talk about Microstrategy today.
I can see MSTR going to 800 within 12 months easier than I can see Bitcoin going to 200,000. But if the United States comes out and says we're buying 200,000 Bitcoin a year over the 5 years, I'm pretty sure that the rest of the world goes, oh shit, we need to buy as much as we can too. MicroStrategy is taking their Legos, building models of these things, and then casting molds from those models and then selling the mold, giving those to Wall Street. Here, you play with those while they're keeping their Bitcoin. And they're able to produce more of these molds and do more with the more Lego bricks that they have. But they never lose their Lego bricks. There are people that got into MSTR because they thought, hey, this seems like a good idea. I like what Seyr is doing. And they got into MSTR, and here they are, having made a ton of money. The date that I'm looking forward to is 2032. That halving, I think, is the most significant one. At that point, 99% of all Bitcoin has been mined. And then also, that's the first time that the subsidy goes below even 1 Bitcoin. You can self-custody Bitcoin, and you can't with MSTR. I can sell, I can move, I can do whatever I want. Bitcoin is a bearer asset. MSTR is not. I believe that MSTR is going to go a whole lot higher, and I also believe that it is not for me to invest.
Do you think Microstrategy has a chance of being the biggest company on earth?
Sure.
Let's talk about Microstrategy today, right?
Yeah, so I guess there's a lot to unpack here, and I got to start out by saying that there's a lot of nuance with MicroStrategy that I don't understand. And what I mean by that is all of the options and all the various, like when you talk about the real, like, I don't know how much you've watched of Punter Jeff or these True North guys, Rory Quant and all them. They talk about this stuff daily, either on Twitter or they do live calls. They've got a Discord where they're talking about this stuff all the time. I don't really know how much you can talk about once you kind of get it. But hell, people seem to find all sorts of things to talk about when it comes to Bitcoin or finance constantly. But I think for most people, like some of my coworkers, some boomers types, that they want to find an investment that is going to at least break even with inflation, ideally do a little bit better, and then just call it a day so they can go on and do other things with their life, which I think is honestly the best way to go about things. If you're sitting there and save a demon, a lot of people have talked about this, that you shouldn't have to have a second job to research all of these things. And so, okay, before I say get into any of that stuff, I want to start by saying that where MicroStrategy is at right now is not due to some, like Seyr said this himself. I'm not saying anything controversial here, but where they're at is due to, in a sense, luck. And that's what I want to point to with this. Well, it's not what the whole thing. Sorry, I just woke up, but it's going to take a little time for my brain to get going here. But luck plays a very big role in how the world works. So Bitcoin does play a big role in where MicroStrategy is at right now. There's no denying that. That is 100% for sure. But why MicroStrategy and Seyr found Bitcoin is out of desperation. And Seyr has said this numerous times. It's not like they had known about Bitcoin for a long time. We're like, let's weigh our options and look at all these different things. It was sort of like, we have a company that's just kind of on its last legs here. It's on life support. You can look at the chart. And you can see back at the .com bubble, they spiked. You see this massive spike that goes up to, I don't know what the share price at the time was, but it's huge. And I think it was the year 2000. And then it craters within days, a month. It just goes nosediving down. And then it stays pretty much flat for about 20 years, 22 years, all the way until they find Bitcoin. And the whole reason that Seyr found Bitcoin is, well, he had a friend, I think his name's Eric Weiss, I think, who was down in Florida, talking to him about Bitcoin, like, hey, have you looked at this thing? It seems like, I don't know that their Eric guy was saying you should put your whole company's balance sheet on this thing. I think it was more like, have you seen this thing? I think it might be a decent investment, much the way that you might talk to a friend and be like, hey, have you thought about property? I know you've got X amount of dollars. Have you thought about buying an apartment, a building, or a second home, or something like that, a vacation rental, Airbnb being it out? Have you thought about putting it into this? Have you thought about doing that? So it's a similar type thing. And then Seyr looks into it deeply and goes, maybe I should buy a lot. I think he's told his friend, is like, I bought I don't know, it was some sizable chunk. It's like I bought $100,000 worth or something like that, or 1,000 coins. I don't know. It was something where the guy was like, okay, I thought you might just dip your toe in. I wasn't expecting you to do that. But the whole reason that MicroStrategy found Bitcoin Yes, his friend, but was their company was dying. Well, it wasn't dying, it was just existing. And I have a personal story that has nothing to do with Bitcoin. I'm just going to say this real quick. Where I lived before, where you and I recorded before, where you were, I don't know if that changed, but where I was a basement apartment that was about 450 square feet. Where I'm in now, I'm in an office, well, what I call my office, of a home that is about 4 times as big. And that has nothing to do with Bitcoin. It's pure dumb luck. It's because a family member had a home that was unoccupied and said, "Hey, do you want to live in this home?" Okay, sure. So I'm still paying rent, but it's less than I was paying before. And this has nothing to do with Bitcoin. So I know a lot of people want to point to Bitcoin and be like, oh, Bitcoin fixes the world in all these different ways. And it does, but we're not there yet. And so there are some times where people just get lucky. And there are people that got into MSTR because they thought, hey, this seems like a good idea. I like what Seyr is doing. And they got into MSTR, and here they are, having made a ton of money. Well, that gets tricky because have you really made any money if you haven't realized anything? Like if you've got all these stocks and you're sitting on them, you're like, oh my goodness, my portfolio is up 1,000%, 10,000%, whatever it is. If you're not actually doing anything with that money and it's just a number on a screen, I like how did okay, like if it hasn't changed your life in any way other than I guess you having some sort of sense of euphoria or a dopamine rush when you check your account, I get that. That's worth something, I guess. But if you're still eating ramen and you're still living in a cardboard box, then I don't know. So I wrote all these things down, a bunch of notes here, and I think that a large reason why people are struggling. You see this on Twitter. You see different clips like I don't understand why MicroStrategy is trading at a premium to NAV. And NAV, I didn't even realize this until thanks to British Huddle, and he explained. I mean, I could have looked it up, I guess, but it's net asset value. And if a company is trading, most companies do trade at a premium. They're trading at a higher volume or being valued more than their net asset value. The total valuation of Apple right now is something like $3 trillion. I mean, that's an insane number. For Microsoft, it's two something. Google's two something. I mean, these companies have these valuations that are numbers that kind of make the head go, it doesn't even really make sense. But the net asset value of these companies is not trillions of dollars. I don't know how much their total property is worth and all the computers that they've purchased and the fancy cars or even Apple's fancy donut headquarters that they've got out there in California. That was billions of dollars, which is a lot of money, but it wasn't trillions of dollars. It wasn't trillions. Maybe if you took into account all of every single phone that exists, every piece of software, every computer, maybe you get to $1 trillion. I don't know. $1 trillion is a lot of money. And then they're trading at 3 times that. They're valued at that. It's not because of the hard goods that they have. It's I don't know if I heard this somewhere or if I don't think I'm smart enough to have come up with this phrase, but I encountered this phrase somewhere that the market trades on tomorrow's sentiment, not today's truth. So people are constantly, well, I think this company's going to go up in value, so they buy it, and so that it's kind of self-fulfilling prophecy in all aspects. Oh, I think this company's not worth as much, and it might not just be I have a hunch. It might be no, this company is definitely going to crater because of these different factors. And we saw that very thing happen in an extreme form in the past few years during COVID, where oh my goodness, look at Peloton, the exercise company. Everybody's going to be exercising in their home. Okay, but for how long? Well, that stock went flying. Zoom went crazy because all these people are going to be doing things from home. So all these companies started trading way, way, way higher than ever before because you had this concentration of stuff happening. People were being concentrated into their homes, and so things that benefited from people being stuck at home were doing really well. Oh, let's invest in all these different things that have to do with that. But then as soon as the world started opening up again and people like could go back to work or had to go back to work, then you're not exercising on your fancy bike anymore. You're not taking Zoom calls as much as you were anymore. And these companies start going down in value. Well, something that's been talked about in the big, oh my goodness, there's a hair on my mic, in the Bitcoin space for a while, is that we live in kind of a wacky town, a funny, an incorrect version of reality. The example of a tape measure has been used a lot of times, like, oh, fiat is an inaccurate tape measure. It doesn't show us the truth. It's the numbers change on the day to day because, well, it depends on what country you're using your tape measure in, but maybe it's inflating at this amount, or maybe in a different place it's inflating at this amount, or maybe it started to slow down. Maybe there's even a moment of deflation. Maybe the numbers shrunk for a moment. It's in constant flux. It's not static. So the image, I'm just going to go in order here. Oh, right. On that note, a lot of people, that whole idea is so ingrained in everything that we do that people don't even question why we get raises. It's weird. People just, you assume that you get a raise. It's in movies and stuff like, oh, honey, I got a raise. Let's go on, or I got a big bonus. My year-end bonus was twice as much as I thought it was going to do. I knew we'd been doing well, but Mr. Smithers didn't tell us how well we were doing, and so let's go on vacation or whatever. Oh wow, that's great. But nobody thinks about, like, well, why is that? Why do you need more money? I've worked the retail jobs. That's been my day job since I was, I don't know, in my teens. And I think, from what I can recall, at every single job I've had, the goal from 1 month to the next month is to do about 10% better than you did the previous year. So if it's January 2024, you want to do 10% better than you did in 23, which you wanted to do in 23, 20 better than 22, and so on and so forth, barring some sort of strange events or world up, like crazy wackiness. But I've never heard anybody ever before Bitcoin say, well, why do we want 10% growth? It just sounds like, oh, you just do because you want more money. Well, yeah, but why do you want more money? What do you mean, why do you want more money? You want more money because obviously. Okay. And if you even start to ask that question, you're questioning the whole fabric of the way everything works. And that gets really weird for some people. I think it almost gets to like a psychedelic trip type thing. Like, whoa, we don't want to question what the final turtle is standing on. We just have to assume that it's turtles all the way down. Like, just go with that. Like, well, that doesn't make sense. Well, it has to, because that's the way it's been working. But what if it doesn't have to work that way? Okay, you're just doing crazy talk now. Jeff Booth and others have talked about this. It's hard, if not impossible, to see a new option from within where you're at right now. A lot of people in relationships get stuck like this. They think, oh, because I'm with this person, that it has to be this way, and they can't imagine themselves with somebody else, or even without this current person. Even if this person's really bad to them, they're abusive, or maybe not even abusive, they're just not a great person. It's not a good fit, but they're comfortable. They've been with this. I've often wondered how many relationships end up as a relationship just because, like, they both worked at Taco Bell and they hung out a few times and they drank together. Maybe they smoked weed a few times, and they got a little tipsy, and they started making out, and now we're going out, and I guess we're a couple now. And we both work the graveyard shift at Taco Bell, and yeah, it ain't great, but we're together. Um,
It's definitely a big amount, I think.
what?
I think it's definitely a lot of relationships go like that. I even see it in my environment sometimes, like, well, I'm together with just because I don't want to go to the trouble of searching a new one. It's like,
Yeah, well,
really,
it's
that should not be the
hard.
reason.
It's hard to find things, like, to know what you want is difficult. Like, this is what I want. You have a clear definition of what it is that you want, and then go seeking that thing. Even MSTR, with it, bringing it back to that, with the genius that Seyr is, he knew what the problem was, but he didn't know where to find a solution. The solution kind of fell into his lap via his friend, via this other thing, this outside thing. It's not as though he went searching for Bitcoin specifically. Is sort of like, hey, this thing exists. And I imagine he, like, I haven't heard of a single person that heard of Bitcoin and it just clicked and they had no questions. Like, yep, sure, I'm in. That great, that wonderful. But I'm done. No, do you want to know how it works? I don't care. It sounds perfect. I don't need to listen to a podcast. I don't need to read a book. I have no questions. I'm going to put 99% of my net worth into it right now. Okay. I don't know who that person is. Most people don't do that unless your net worth is like $5. Like, I have nothing to lose here. I'll just, why not? Sure. Let's see what happens.
But we might end up at that place, like if Bitcoin is really widely adopted and it's just like such a no-brainer and everyone is talking, like if Bitcoin is at that boring place where the store of value is just so proven and it's just like at such a high level where your grandma gives the kids advice like, yeah, here's some Bitcoin, keep it, like, don't sell those, like that grandma advice. If we come to that point, maybe then at the same time, probably is similar to how people now put all their wealth into fiat and they have no clue about finances, because if they had a clue about finance, they would not put all the money in fiat. But yeah, most people don't have even any investments. Then most of them have bad investments, but that's another story. Even at least they have investments. So maybe at that point, so a lot of people don't ask those questions, I feel like.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right that in years' time that people will just they'll see what's happening with their money. And I think it'll be a while yet. I don't know how long, but I think it'll be some years before people start to understand what inflation is. And I don't even know that the masses will. I think it's like so many different fields. Most people don't understand, I certainly don't, how the internet works. I know that if I turn on my computer, signals happen, data flows through wires to different places, and I'm able to talk to you in a completely different part of the world, but I couldn't break it down in detail and be like, oh, well, this is exactly what's happening. And I don't even know what I don't know to say what I don't know. Like, I can't sit here and explain how it all works because I don't know what I'm talking about. I can't tell you how Elon's rockets work. There most things I don't know about. I mean, that's true of most people. You have to pick some items that you can focus on and do your best within that area, and then just kind of let everything else happen. We trust so many of our systems to other people, and we're like, well, I hope the electricians and the plumbers and the construction workers know what the hell they're doing, because I sure as shit don't. Like, I just had a power outage that lasted 36 hours, and like, if it was up to me, it's like, well, Dell, we need you to go and fix it. I wouldn't even have a clue where to begin. Like, I, I guess I'll just go and look for a tree. I just randomly drive down roads and hope that I find like a sparking wire. Like, oh, that seems to be the clear problem there. Now, what do I do about it? I don't know. I guess I'll try and get some sticks and put the wires together or something. Like, I have no idea what I'm doing here. I mean, if it was up to me to fix the grid, we'd be screwed. Like, well, we don't have power anymore. Like, that's just the end of that. Like, that was fun. It was a fun ride having electricity, but we don't anymore.
Yeah, it's the same. It's the same way when you drive a car and there's some problem and there's something going on, and then you like turn to the road and then you open the front trunk and you just try to, like, you have no clue about anything. At least I don't have, and you just still open it to see like there's such a like an obvious problem that
Yeah,
everybody can see it,
yeah,
and you're like, oh yeah, there's the plus and minus, and then I have to connect them back, like there's a cable disconnect or something really
right.
obvious. But yeah, it's not like that. It's even like, even the things you do every day. I, for example, do the podcast every day, and yesterday I had a problem where microphone was not working. I still don't know why,
Yeah,
but I needed 30 minutes to fix it. How did I fix it? I deinstalled all the software I used for it and reinstalled it. Problem fixed. Still don't know why the problem existed. But
yeah,
yeah, I think that's where we kind of end up also with Bitcoin, where a small minority actually knows why Bitcoin is valuable and why and how Bitcoin works and all the applications. And there's like an industry around that then provides all the applications. But the masses don't care. They just want to see the purchasing power go up. That's all they will care about. The same way, like nobody cares how WhatsApp works. They just like to see the tick that the other person got the message. That's no proof. That's just like a pixel, but they see it as proof. The same way with Bitcoin, I think, long term.
yeah, yeah. And I think it. it's either gonna be one of two things, and people have said this. I mean, I'm just saying this is the same thing, that most people, the masses, will get into Bitcoin because, like Seyr, they realize, oh my goodness, I'm just getting poor every year. I mean, I felt this in a way that I could not have articulated years ago, and I think many people do, where they just notice that things continually get more expensive. Like you look back and I mean, you hear this all the time. Like, oh, I remember back in my day, I was able to rent an apartment for X amount of dollars. And now, man, did you know that same building it just sold for X millions of dollars? I had a room in that apartment bill. I had a whole apartment to myself, and it was $500 a month back in the 80s or whatever. And now that apartment sold for $5 million. Or you hear stories like that. Or I remember personally when I would go and help, because I was homeschooled, helping my mother shop, seeing packets of ramen, these Maruchan ramen packets. They're, I mean, really inexpensive. And when they were on sale, like the weekly special or whatever, you could get 10 packs for $1. So they were 10 cents. And now I think the cheapest that they are is like just under $1, maybe if they're on an extreme sale, like 80 cents or something like that. Maybe I think they're closer to $1. And so I see that and go, okay, that's a very obvious sign. Like I distinctly remember them being 10 cents because my mom didn't usually like to get them because it's not really good food. But when they were that inexpensive, it was like, all right, well, it's some amount of sustenance and you really enjoy it. So sure, 10 cents is hard to say no to. It's not that much money, even then. Um, so bringing this back around to MSTR, I think that MSTR, to the long and short of it, it's tricky. So I think that I understand what they're doing generally, and I also think that what they're doing is worth drastically more than what they're currently valued at. So I don't think that their market cap should be I don't know what it is right now, 65, 70 billion that it's at. I think it should be way higher. I don't know how high. I trillions. I do believe. I mean, I think they should be up there, right next to right next to Microsoft and the big seven: Nvidia, Apple, Google, all of them. And if somebody were ask why, yeah, okay, so it's like 60,
There's the
65 trillion.
market cap of like 81 billion.
Okay.
And just something that I want to, because you mentioned it before, where they like in 2000 February, March, where they just like shot up like crazy and then took a really sharp dive,
Mm-hmm.
and then they were really like almost flat. Obviously it went up a little bit over that time, but over 20 years, a 4x, not bad, but also not good. Like there are other stocks that went up crazy in that time. But then we kind of have that biggest comeback story of all time. I feel like that's crazy, from that one all-time high to the right now all-time high.
Yeah.
It's still 30% up. It's not significant, but the people that there might be some person out there that bought MicroStrategy at the top in 2000 and now seeing his position for the first time ever in the green.
I'm
I don't
above
know if
water again. Yay.
yeah, fine. I made it. I made in 24 years 30% of profits.
Yeah. Finally,
But
I
yeah,
beat you, inflation. I knew MSTR was the best, but I think that spike on the far right there is going to be way higher. And the reason I think that is because I think one spike represents a lie, and I think the other spike represents truth. So this gets into the core of what I think about MicroStrategy. So, and this brings me back around to where I kind of started, where we've heard people in the Bitcoin space talk about how, oh, the world has been operating, the monetary system has been, I don't know if I would go so far as to say a lie, because a lie requires conscious intent, but it's certainly been not true. We've been living in this kind of wacky town. And the image that I like to explain this is that, imagine a city where all of the contractors are using these wacky town tape measures. There's one of two options. If your tape measures are continually changing on you, they're growing, the numbers are moving farther apart, they're shifting, it's all always moving. Your city's going to end up in one of two ways, as far as I can tell. It's going to end up good, the way that we see most towns that functions. We've got structurally sound buildings, things are working, but there's a big caveat to how that could happen. Or it looks like something out of a wackadoo cartoon, Willy Wonka town, where the windows are all misshapen and things are topsy turvy and pipes go from huge to small. It's all crazy and things are constantly bursting. I mean, it really looks like a cartoon world where things are breaking and the wacky guy, the five dudes jump out of a tiny truck and they wrap it up with duct tape and they do a lot of shrugging to each other. I guess that works. And they go bumbling off. Well, because we don't live in that world, then how do we get the other world? An inordinate amount of energy and time to combat the lie. Now, what this looks like, as far as I can tell, is heaps and heaps and heaps of money being thrown at something. Well, give me an example of heaps and heaps of money being thrown at something, Del. How about, as I talked about earlier, and Seyr has pointed to, all of these companies trading at massive, like I've got a number here that I think it was Hodl said that um, Google trades at 22 times their net asset values. I don't know who figured that out, but you do a rough figure of all their properties, and you get an estimate. And you go, okay, well they're if they're worth X billion or trillions of dollars, and their total assets are this billions of dollars, then that they're trading at a 22 valuation. I think Microsoft is 50 times, Apple is something like that. It's way higher than that because people are throwing money at these things because they think that it's worth this because of what they think that they'll do. Why it's trading so high, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. I don't get it. But the base layer of what those companies are is their buildings, but the real base layer is the people that they have. They have tons and tons of people doing all these different things, coming out with new products, keeping the products that they have online. MicroStrategy has a really small team. I don't know how big their software side of things are, but the Bitcoin side of things, I've heard it's like a dozen people. You don't really need that many people to figure out how to do the whole Bitcoin treasury thing and then make products for Wall Street. Well, back to the Wacky Town thing. If you have a general contracting company and you have to combat your wackadoo tape measures, you're going to be spending so many man hours, so many resources just to try and find truth so that you can build things and do things and not have this damn tape measure continually lie to you or accept that it lies to you and try and find some modicum of reality within that wackadoo world. And then you see this other company come along and they've got 10 people to your 10,000 people. And every time they build a building, it just works. And they build another one, it just works. And for a little while, you could say, oh, they're just getting lucky. They're just getting crazy lucky. And you could say that about MicroStrategy. Oh, they're just getting crazy lucky. Oh, they haven't, they're not actually doing anything, this or that. Well, they are. They are. How do you look at them trading up there in the likes of, I mean, the volume traded is right up there with Nvidia, some of the biggest companies in the world. When Seyr went through their entire earnings call here a couple 3 weeks ago, whenever it was, he was pointing out how they have pretty much blown every other company out of the water in terms of the amount that they're trading. And they're trading right up there with the likes of Tesla and Nvidia and Apple and whatnot, which doesn't make any sense for a company that is a small fraction, until it does make sense because you realize, oh, their base layer is this immovable thing. So if you're trying to move a boulder in your fulcrum, the block of wood that you've got your pry bar stuck under, or on top of rather, and your block of wood is sitting on cotton candy, it's not going to allow you to move that boulder very well. If another person next to you has got their fulcrum set on concrete, they're going to be able to move that boulder a hell of a lot easier. But if your entire cotton candy foundation requires thousands of people to come in there and just stuff cotton candy, and you've got the cotton candy people and you've got the cotton candy manufacturers and the machines to make the cotton candy and the whole infrastructure, you're probably not going to question your whole cotton candy mode of operation. You're going to go, well, this works. Clearly, we're able to move boulders sometimes. It works well enough to do that. But you are going to start to wonder why the person over there using concrete as their base layer is able to do this a whole lot better. This is where I run into the limits of my understanding on these things, because somebody might go, okay, well, give me an example of cotton candy versus concrete. And I don't understand exactly how the markets work well enough to tell you like these options on all these different things to say, well, this is an example of cotton candy and this is an example of concrete, except that Bitcoin doesn't move, it doesn't change, it is what it is. And a side note, it's so funny when people are like, oh, if Saylor bought 55,000 Bitcoin, why didn't the price go up? Somebody had to sell. That's the number one thing that happens when somebody buys something is somebody has had to sell it. What do you mean? Why did the price go up? It's when people don't sell that causes the price to go up. If he bought it, then that's an obvious indication that somebody sold, like that, or he stole it. I don't think he stole 55,000 Bitcoin from somebody. I feel like that would have made news somewhere. So, hey, I seem to be missing some Bitcoin. I think this Michael Saylor guy might have something to do with it. But when you have, back to the cotton candy thing, so much money being thrown around on the market, and I mean Wall Street, but other markets too. But I believe that Wall Street is the biggest of the financial markets. It, and then you have MicroStrategy come along doing what, I mean, honestly, whatever it is that they're doing, but they are offering products to Wall Street to make money. It's going to look weird, I imagine, to most people, especially that have been in the markets for a while. Like, well, this doesn't make any sense, but it does to a Bitcoiner. They're just buying and holding Bitcoin and then offering products to Wall Street. I actually, Saylor said something a few times that he's smart. I'm not going to deny that. I mean, you've talked to him. He's a really smart guy and he explained deep concepts. But I think that the example that he continually points to, or he's at least pointed to a few times, is a little bit not accurate. So he has likened what MSTR is doing to what standard gas does. I think it's standard gas, standard oil, where they take crude oil and they refine it, and you've got asphalt, and then you've got kerosene for airplane. You've got all these different products. Okay, it's a decent analogy, but the problem that I have with that analogy is that most people can't use crude oil. I if somebody dropped a 55 drum of air barrel off in my driveway, I'd be like, okay, I don't know what to do this. Maybe I can find somebody to sell it to. This is more of a nuisance than anything. I don't know what to do with this. And I think that's the case for most people. They can't just use crude oil. So his analogy there, that's why I dislike it, because most people, even somebody that doesn't really know much about it, can use Bitcoin, even if all you do is sell it. Like, it's really easy to sell. If you have it on an exchange, you can just press the sell button. If it's on River or Cash App or wherever. I can't just sell crude. I don't know what I would do. I guess I'd call some auto parts stores and just like I'd start the search of what do I do with this thing. But I can do something with Bitcoin. And so I think what they're doing is less like standard gas and it's more like Lego. So anybody can use Lego bricks. Maybe you're really good and you can build really neat things, but even just a chimp can at least play with them. You can do something with your Lego bricks. But I think what MicroStrategy is doing is they're taking their Lego bricks, they're building models with these Lego bricks, because Wall Street is so funny because they don't really do anything. I mean, they're not producing anything. Not really. It's not like, oh, Wall Street makes phones. No, they don't. Oh, they produce train cars to move goods across the country. No, they don't. They're kind of like a bunch of degenerate gamblers it's like, have you ever seen the movie Rat Race?
You mean the short movie, like the 15 minutes where?
No, it's a full length movie. It's about people racing across the country, and
Oh, then
I
I
think it's got
don't know
John
about it.
Cleese with it. Okay, it was a goofy movies, I think, from the, I don't know, 2005 or something like that. But there's John Cleese is in it from Monty Python and a bunch of other stuff, and he's part of, if not the head of, this whole group that is betting on this race, and they're betting on, yeah, that movie. When did it come out? 2001.
2001, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, John Cleese is in it. There's this group of degenerate gamblers, and they'll bet on anything, anything. Like they order room service at this hotel that they're staying at, and they're like, oh, what color is his shirt gonna be, and is will the food be will the butter be on the left side of the tray or be on the right side of the tray? They're betting on anything and everything. They're just throwing money down and betting on this and betting on that. And that's how I view Wall Street. They don't care what the businesses are. They'll bet on anything. Like they'll leave the morals and the ethics to anybody else. They'll if they can profit off of pharmaceuticals, which are currently killing people en masse, doesn't matter. I don't. Maybe to the individuals, maybe there are some individual investors that are like, whoa, I'm not going to invest in that company because I know from a friend that they're doing some really shady stuff or something like that. Maybe. But I think even that person, if he works for a firm and knows that that company is going to make millions of dollars and is the difference between his entire company getting a massive bonus or not, probably is going to go through with the trade anyways and make a ton of money. And I think that's how Wall Street generally works. It was just what I mean, in this country at least, is one of two, from what I understand, that
Yeah,
we allow.
there's this meme. It's a really funny one. Like there are two Wall Street guys coming together, and they don't know what they are selling or buying. They don't know which unit it even is. They just know like I bought it at like 48 and I sold it at 57, and they made a profit. That's the only language. They really don't care what's the underlying thing or what's the unit of it. They can't even explain it. They just care about the profit, and I think that's really nicely showing what Wall Street actually cares about.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and that's that. I mean, you could have a whole debate about whether or not that's should exist, but you can't deny that it does. And you can't go to New York and go to Wall Street and look around and be like, well, these are a bunch of poor people. They don't have much money. They don't know what they're talking about. It's like going to Vegas. This is so amusing. The biggest display of Vegas that you are going to lose your money is Vegas itself. You just have to look around. You like take 2 seconds, like this didn't get built because everybody is walking out of these casinos a winner. this this is here because most people are losing money. Like the vast majority. You are walking up against that. It's like people walking up like David walking up to 1,000 Goliaths and like, yeah, no, I can beat you. Like, well, okay, maybe, but usually no. How do you know usually no? Who are you to say? Look around. Look around. Open your eyes. That's how I know usually no. But what MicroStrategy is doing, as far as I can tell, is they're taking their Lego bricks and they're constantly getting more. They're not selling their Lego bricks. So this is another reason why Saylor's example doesn't work is because they're not using the crude. They're not when you use crude to refine it, you lose the crude and you have to go and get more and you have to but with my example here, they take the Lego bricks, they build models from those Lego bricks. They build different. I don't know, a farmhouse, an animal, a spaceship, things that Wall Street wants. We for whatever reason they want these different things. I don't know why. It doesn't matter. They're able to make money with these different things. They bet on these different things. They move them around. They trade them. They're like kids with Pokemon cards on the schoolyard. Like, oh, you've got a model ship. You've got this. So they're trading them. And so MicroStrategy is taking their Legos, their Bitcoin, building models of these things, and then casting molds from those models, and then selling the molds, giving those to Wall Street. Here, you play with those while they're keeping their Bitcoin, and they keep them coming up with more things, and they're able to produce more of these molds and do more with the more Lego bricks that they have. But they never lose their Lego bricks. They never lose their crude oil. They're just able to offer these products to Wall Street. But as far as I can tell, I don't think all of those products are available to the average consumer. I think there's some of them, like some of their bonds and stuff. I'm not, like, again, like I said, I've kind of at the limits of what I understand about these things, and I listen to these podcasts with Jeff and Rory Quant and Grain of Salt and these guys, and I feel like I'm the dumb field worker out there listening to the scholars, and I just hear snippets of what they're saying. They're around the campfire and they've got their charts and their books, and they're going in, they've got their robes, and they're huddled around speaking in some strange esoteric language. And even though I speak the same language as them, like I understand the words, the context of the words don't make a whole lot of sense. Like my brother has done some of the option stuff and has done well for him, but he's also taken a few small hits here and there. He's had to buy his options or to resell his options. I don't really get it, because it does seem like, to some degree, gambling. Not quite the same, but similar. It's certainly, it's a lot more like gambling than buying Bitcoin and just doing nothing, just sitting on it. And that's the part that I dislike about that whole world, is there's certainly some amount of time constraint that it takes to do this stuff. And you might say, oh no, it only takes 10 minutes. I log into my account, I set this, I do that. I've got these different parameters. If it goes up to this amount, it'll sell. If it doesn't go to that amount, it'll do this or that. And it's 10 minutes later. It's like, yeah, is it really 10 minutes? Is it really? Are you telling me that your brain is only on for that thing for 10 minutes of the day? Because I doubt it. I bet you're checking the price. I bet you're doing this. You're logging back in. I bet you're listening to podcasts about that, what the best time is. So I bet it's more like multiple hours every single day, and certainly every week. Is that worth it to you? Is it fun? Okay, like that, if that has value right there for you, I'm not going to tell you not to do it. I'm not going to tell anybody not to do something unless it's illegal, and then you might not want to do it. But in terms of the buying and trading stuff, I okay, I I guess have at it. I made a video about this recently, and then one of the comments was, "Oh well, what should my distribution be?" I like MSTR. I like what they're doing, and I like what Bitcoin is. I understand Bitcoin well enough. I think I understand both these things. How much should I be putting in? If I've got a paycheck and I've got, let's say, $1,000 comes in, and my expenses, just keeping it simple, is $500, so I can invest each month $500. Do I put $100 into MicroStrategy and the 400 into MSTR, or is vice versa? Like, what is the breakdown there? And I can't tell an individual what to do, but I came up with 4 categories. Do I still have it? I don't know. Let's see if I can remember. So the first category is, if you have an employer that does some sort of 401k matching thing, you put in this amount, they'll put in that amount. That seems like a really good opportunity to put it into MSTR. American Hodl talked about his wife, who is a nurse practitioner. The whole reason that he got into MSTR, well, he's telling, he wanted her to get into Bitcoin. Well, he couldn't. There's no 401k that you can buy direct to Bitcoin and then take self custody of it. Like that's not a thing. So he was trying to get into GBTC, couldn't for some reason. Maybe, I don't know, whatever. I think the 401k was through Fidelity. Maybe they knew because they were going to launch their ETF, they didn't want to touch GBTC. I don't know what the reason was. He couldn't. So the next best thing was MSTR. He's like, okay, well, they've got Bitcoin exposure, so this is the closest I can get to owning Bitcoin is MSTR. And so his wife went 100% in onto MSTR with her 401k, and has blown everybody else's 401k out of the water by orders of magnitude, for obvious reasons, because they've done so damn well. So I think if you have an employer, this is person type 1, that can do some sort of a match, that seems like a good idea. That, like, if you can't get Bitcoin and you can get free money because your employer is going to do a match, that seems like a no-brainer to me. The next type of person is, you enjoy the trading stuff. That's worth something to you. You have some idea of what you're doing, or you think you know what you're doing, and you're able to make a profit. You've got experience there. Maybe you do it for work, and so you've got your own little side project. That seems to be the case with Rory, Quant, and Punter Jeff. They work for different firms on Wall Street, I think, generally, broadly speaking, Wall Street. And so they do this MSTR thing on their own. They've mentioned a few times that they've talked to their coworkers and employers like, hey, maybe we should allocate more. And they're just going, yeah, maybe. Like, okay, well, I'm doing really well. Look at my portfolio. Oh, that's cute. Okay. So that's the second type of person. The third kind of person is, and this is the one that I kind of pause the most on to suggest, but it does seem to me that in the short term, like 12 to 24 months, that there is a higher likelihood that MSTR doubles. Like, it seems more likely to me that in 12-ish months, MSTR goes from the 400-ish that they're at to 800, that Bitcoin going from the 90-ish that it's at to 180. I can see MSTR going to 800 within 12 months easier than I can see Bitcoin going to, call it, 200,000. Now, I can see a path for Bitcoin doing that very easily, especially with Trump coming in and all of this talk of nation state adoption. Like, things can change really, really, really fast. And I've got another note on that fast thing here in a second. So if you need money, this is definitely not financial advice, but if you're thinking like, hey, I need this hip replacement and I need X amount of dollars, You have a clear goal, not just, oh, I want more money to have more money. No, no, no. Like you have a clear need for this money. You know that this hip has to be done on this date. Like it's the day for the surgery is uh, February 2nd, 2026. So I need to have the funds before then to pay for this massive surgery. And if I don't have it, my quality of life will be drastically worse. It seems to me that putting some amount of money into MSTR in the hopes, honestly, it's a hope. It's not a guarantee that it doubles. Seems decent. That seems like a decent idea to me. I don't know if it's a great idea, but it seems like a decent idea to me. And then the last, I'm glad I remembered all four. The last is you just like what Seyr has done. I purchased $40 of the share when it was like $250. So I got 0.15% of a share. And that's probably all I'm going to put into it. And it's more of a, hey, thumbs up. Thank you, Seyr, for being a large reason that I got orange pilled. I like what you guys are doing over there. You're a Bitcoin focused company. Thumbs up to that. But I'm not going to be putting a sizable chunk because, I mean, honestly, at the end of the day, you can self custody Bitcoin and you can't with MSTR. I can sell, I can move, I can do whatever I want. Bitcoin is a bearer asset. MSTR is not. It's a vehicle. It's a thing to do stuff with. And hey, the world needs that. Apparently, it does. Needs all this Wall Street stuff. But yeah. So on the note of the fast thing, uh, anybody that says that the world can't change to a Bitcoin standard or that, oh no, it can't go that high that fast has absolutely no idea what they're talking about. I mean, truly none. And they have a very short memory as well. You and anybody else that was alive and conscious in the past 4 years, and I guess over the age of like 10, because you had enough awareness, notice that the world changed really, really fast in a short amount of time. Super fast. We went from not having to wear masks to needing to wear masks to not being locked inside to being locked in. I mean, huge, huge changes across the world. Now, I'm not making a claim to one way or another on any of that, but I will now. I think it was a bunch of bullshit. But the world changed huge. Like that's undenying. And it changed. I mean, we went from living one way to another way in the course of 18 months, 24. And that was with some portion of the world, some portion of the population not really wanting to, not being a fan of that. So we had these social pressures to do different things in different ways. And oh, we've got plexiglass in front of cashiers and we've got all these different things. And some stores did it really fast because they had plexiglass kicking around, so they were able to do it. Other places had to wait on supply chain things, and other places were like, we just don't want to do this, until the city came in and said, if you don't do this, we're going to shut you down. So there was some dragging of feet. There was all these different things, but it didn't move nearly as fast as it could have if everybody was on board. Let's do this right now today. I mean, if that had been the case, it would have changed within like 6 months. But when you have an incentive to change, I don't know how fast that changes. Like super, 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 super fast. I imagine that all these terminals that you see, I don't know how it is where you live, but pretty much everywhere you go now, maybe it's been this way for a while, you've got these little terminals where you go to pay, and you either tap your card. That's probably the most common way that people pay that I see these days. Or you're not really tapping, you're just kind of holding it in the region of the little reader, and then it sucks the money out of your card, and then you go on your way. Or your phone, or in some cases you stick the chip in there, or in the real rare cases these days, because your card is old or the chip is broken or whatever, you swipe it. You actually swipe it. That used to be the most common way, but that's the least common way now. Well, all of these readers have a little screen right there. I mean, every single one that I've seen has a little screen right there. It would take a simple software update for that screen to show a QR code, and suddenly you're using your phone, which, I don't know, 25% of people do already anyways, and you scan that, boom, you're paying with Bitcoin. It wouldn't take much effort at all. Or you have a card that's linked to your phone that is holding your Bitcoin. And if nation state adoption does happen, if we do see a strategic Bitcoin reserve happen in the US, I think it's going to be it's going to be that meme, the guy with the domino. You're probably going to see the first one being El Salvador, although I mean, thumbs up to what a lot of what they're doing down there, but I don't know that El Salvador could really be pointed to as the reason that the world got on a Bitcoin standard. I don't know. Some people might point to that. But if the United States comes out and says we're buying without question 200, what is it? They want to do 200,000 Bitcoin a year over 5 years. There's, in my mind, 0% chance that the rest of the world goes, oh, that's cool for you. Have fun with that. I'm pretty sure that the rest of the world goes, oh shit, we need to buy as much as we can too, for all the reasons that you just can't let your competitor, in some cases your enemy, get this advantage like that. There's just you can't. And I don't know who it was there. Oh, he's on Naval, Naval. He said, I think it was like 10 years ago or something. It was in the price of Bitcoin was in the 3 digits. It was like $100 or something. He said, one of the most prescient tweets maybe ever. He said, if you're a developing country, I'm paraphrasing here, and you want to like increase your standing in the world, something like this, buy as much Bitcoin as you can right now. I mean, imagine if they had done that. Imagine if El Salvador had bought as much Bitcoin as they possibly could 10 years ago or whatever it was, 13 years ago when he made this tweet at $100 a piece. And their value would rival that of major countries right now. It'd be insane. And so I think that when the strategic Bitcoin reserve happens, assuming it does, and it's things that I've been seeing online, and I mean, I know Dennis Porter gets a lot of crap, like, oh, here he is again doing all this hype stuff, but man, you can't deny the results. Like, he's on the plane, he's going around, he's talking to these politicians, he's in these spaces. You see him with Ted Cruz, you see him at these different places helping getting these bills passed. Like, that's having some impact. Clearly, he says that all these different people, maybe some of it's hype, sure, but there's truth there too. It's not like he's just flat out lying and saying, oh, there's politicians that are interested in these strategic Bitcoin reserve things. I mean, we saw the news come out of, what was it, Pennsylvania recently, saying that they wanted to do that. And then there's talk, I think there was, I think I might have this wrong, but I'm pretty sure there was a tweet or something from representatives from Texas saying that they wanted to do the same thing. It's not nothing. And he's part of those conversations to some degree. You don't dedicate, as far as I can tell, your life to the Satoshi Action Fund and raise money to go and do this thing for this explicit goal. And there's other people doing it on the global scale, Samson Mao and Adam Back, which is great. That's wonderful. But I'm partial to the country that I live in, and I want to see it here. And also, I'm partial to this country doing it because, like I just mentioned about El Salvador, I don't know how much of an impact even a bigger country like, I don't know, let's say France. If France came out and said, we're adopting a Bitcoin strategic reserve, like I don't know that would have quite the same ripple effects as the United States saying it, or China, or Brazil, one of the really big countries out there. China, Russia, Brazil, India, maybe Canada, the UK, something with Germany, maybe. I don't know what France's GDP is, but I think Germany's got it beat.
I partnered up with Coin Vigilante. This is the most beautiful Bitcoin timepiece that I ever saw created by anyone. Look at that beauty. I love it so much. Coin Vigilante made a perfect Bitcoin watch. That's the perfect, subtle, elegant way to go out there and show that you are a Bitcoiner. And that watch brand is Bitcoin only. And Coin Vigilante just dropped a completely new and amazing Genesis edition of their watch collections. You have the date of the first ever mined Bitcoin block in there, and of course also the block height and which epoch we are currently in. I love the level of detail they put in this masterpiece. And make sure to check out those amazing Coin Vigilante timepieces down in the descriptions. I love those watches so much. If you watch or listen to my podcast on a regular basis, I guess you already bought some Bitcoin. And now the most important step is to keep their Bitcoin. Keep them secure in a hardware wallet. My personal recommendation for hardware wallet is the BitBox. It's super secure. It's simple to set up. It's also a perfect gift for a friend who has still their Bitcoin on an exchange. And you can get a 5% discount with the code Robin at the checkout. Visit bitbox.swiss/Robin to get your BitBox. And the next step is to really level up your sovereignty as an individual. You have to have the most secure self-custody setup. You have to secure your own devices. You have to protect your privacy. You have to set up an inheritance plan. And depending on where you live, you even want to have a plan B, a citizenship where you can move in case something goes really, really wrong. And through all those steps, the Bitcoin way is guiding you through step by step. And if you visit thebitcoinway.com/partners/Robin, you even get a 30-minute free call to find out how you can level up your sovereignty.
Pretty sure.
Germany is the biggest one in Europe, and I think France is second or third, something like that. But yeah, like you definitely need a bigger one. El Salvador is and even they don't even own that many Bitcoin. Like one Bitcoin a day buying. I think it's something along the lines of like 3 or 4% of their capabilities of what they could own. So even though they are really conservatively doing that, and obviously like El Salvador is smaller than Austria and way poorer than Austria. And Austria is just like such a small country. Sometimes we think about El Salvador too much and too big because it's just mentioned so many times, but it's a small country and a poor country too. Obviously, it has a really big symbolic effect. But as of the real effects, like if Donald Trump is tweeting something, that is gonna get discussed in every country, in every secret service agency around the world. If El Salvador Nayib Bukele is tweeting something, that might also get discussed depending on what it is, but not even close to the degree of how closely America is watched by everyone and with all the agencies. So like El Salvador is a very small fish against a huge, maybe against a huge ocean of America.
Yeah, it's kind of like maybe not to the same degree, but a similar degree. If Michael Saylor says something, if you're in Bitcoin and you've been paying attention, you know about it, obviously. But if you don't, it's like, okay, who's this guy? Whatever. But if Tim Cook comes out and says something about we've got this new thing, whatever, the VR contacts that stick onto your eyes and you can see the internet in real time, that's going to make way more news. It's going to be on the front page of some newspapers. It's going to be all over the internet. It's going to be a big deal. And he's just one CEO, and Michael Saylor is another CEO. But one of those, I think MicroStrategy, they have more Bitcoin now than El Salvador, right? A lot more.
A lot more, yeah. El Salvador has a few thousand Bitcoin, I think, and MicroStrategy has a few 100,000 Bitcoin. so it's not even close.
Yeah.
And MicroStrategy has way more. But in Apple, it's really interesting because Michael Saylor actually brought that up. What if Apple goes ahead and makes multi-signature self-custody wallet where when you have the iPad, your iPhone and the Apple Watch together and you press the buttons, you can transfer something and it's like a custodial solution like that. That onboards a lot of people and it's native and it's really nice and it's the user interface is super easy as we are used to by Apple. So obviously maybe a similar size of like Apple versus MicroStrategy of the impact right now. That might change. I had recently a guest on who said, like, if Apple continues like that and MicroStrategy continues like that, MicroStrategy might buy Apple.
Yeah. I don't know exactly what goes into purchasing a company of that size, but I don't know that MicroStrategy would want to buy Apple. I don't know what the advantage would be for them. I think it seems like, given the MicroStrategy's recent earnings call and when they changed what they are to a Bitcoin treasury company, that is the core of what they are doing now. And they have their 9 like guidelines, guiding principles. Number one is buy and hold Bitcoin. That's just, I don't remember what the other 9 are, or the other 8 rather, but number one is buy and hold Bitcoin. And so I don't see how purchasing some other software technology company with all of the different things, and I mean, Rory Quant has talked about this a bunch on the different times on the True North things, and it's something that I think is extremely underappreciated and not even really thought about. Is he talks about how he got into Tesla when that was popping off, and he says to understand what Tesla is doing is so more complicated than what MicroStrategy is doing. You've got to look at the batteries and how they get the batteries and how these parts are developed in this country and then the parts are shipped over here. And then not to even mention how Elon Musk, his time is split between Tesla and then over with SpaceX. And I don't even know how he does all of what he does. And admittedly, he's got tons of people. So I don't know how much Elon himself is doing, but he certainly is the face of these companies. Like if somebody said, like, who do you think of when you name a person related to SpaceX? Like, well, it's Elon and a bunch of faceless people that are all extremely important. Obviously, it's not like Elon himself is not Tony Stark. He's not actually doing these things. He's not a genius flying around in his Iron Man suit, landing in this place and doing it all himself, then going off and doing it over there. He's got teams of really, really smart people, obviously. But what they're doing is so complicated. Like you can't come in and be like, oh, we're going to be the next Tesla. No, you're not. I mean, not right away. You're not. Or we're going to be the next Nvidia. Really, you are? Where are you going to build your chips? Where? How are you going to do that? You're not going to do that. You could start to, I guess, try, but the chances that you actually come along and overtake Nvidia is basically zero, because chances are, if you're doing really well, they'll just come along and say, here's $50 billion for you to be a part of us now. And I'm like, oh, that's a lot of money. Sure, I guess I'll do that now. Like, the chances that you just keep on doing your thing is really small. But the wild thing about MSTR is, and Seyr said this multiple times, like, here's what we're doing. By all means, please copy us. Because they're so far ahead in their holdings that I don't know. The world's going to be so weird in 10 years that a lot of people point to different dates as like, oh, this date, that date. The date that I'm looking forward to, and at least in Bitcoin terms, is 2032. That halving, I think, is the most significant one for multiple reasons. At that point, 99% of all Bitcoin has been mined. And then also, that's the first time that the subsidy goes below even 1 Bitcoin. I think it's 0.73 something Bitcoin per, or 0.76 or something. It's 3/4 of a Bitcoin roughly at 2032. It's a big deal. And I think I I can foresee it might happen so much faster than that, but I can definitely see that being the wake up call for the world when people are like, oh shit, I really should have gotten some of this Bitcoin thing. But you still can. That's the wild thing. Is like there's never a bad time. I just had a family member via another family member, so one that I don't. Yeah, 2032. Yeah, 0.78.
So that, yeah.
Yeah, that's wild. But I had a family member that I don't talk to ask another family member that I do talk to, oh, hey, let me know when Bitcoin goes down. I mean, it is that meme. Like, oh, I don't want to buy it right now. Let me know. I said, just tell this other person that it's on sale compared to the $1 million that it's going to be at in the not so distant future. But that doesn't work. They see it go up. It is that meme where it's like the line of people for the one booth where Bitcoin's whatever $90,000, and then the other booth it's $50,000, and there's nobody in line.
Yeah, it's like once Bitcoin is up at like 100K, people are saying like, oh, I will wait till it goes back down to 50K. And then when it actually goes back down to 50K, people are like, oh, good that I never bought it. And then
Yeah,
it goes back
exactly.
up to 250K. And
Yeah,
it's like, it's so dumb. Like even people that have it around me is saying like, oh, like, is it now a good time to buy? And if someone asks that questions, I know he needs to do more research and he didn't fully understand it. If you fully understand Bitcoin, you don't ask when to buy.
yeah.
You're like, like how can I buy more? Like, how do I get more of that? But not, you don't ask like, oh, like, will it go up next year?
Yeah, usually I have my paycheck automatically. I have So I know there's a lot of different exchanges out there, but the one that I use by far, hands down the most, is Cash App. They're one of two that I believe, I might have this incorrect, but I know River has proof of reserves, and I think that Cash App does too. I think they do. And another reason that even if they don't, they are 100% only Bitcoin. They've got little education things on their phone. It's like, hey, learn about Bitcoin. They have no other of the shit coins on there. You can buy stocks and whatnot. But if you have X amount of dollars, I don't remember what the threshold is, but if you have some amount of dollars, it's like $200 or 300 or something like that from your paycheck, direct deposit in there, you can set up automatic buys in a River, and I think others have this too, but Cash App is just really easy, where it'll automatically purchase when you get your direct deposit some amount. You pick the percentage of Bitcoin or stocks as well for zero fee, no fee. So I have some portion of my paychecks going in and just does that every 2 weeks. I don't even think about it. It just happens. Sometimes I get more sats than other times. Like these days, I've been getting, well, not a great deal on sats. I missed the 2,500 plus days, but it's still something. And I think in the not so distant future, we're going to be in the three digits. That's sad to think about. It's happy. It's bittersweet, but yeah, I wish there was a good way for me to explain that to people, that there's never a bad time to buy Bitcoin. It's like saying that it doesn't really work the same way, but it's almost like saying it's never a bad time to buy food. But it's not quite the same. Like,
I always answer with like the best, and I got that from some quote. I don't remember where I heard it first, but it's really popular. I think for the best time to buy Bitcoin is 10 years ago, and the second best time is now. So,
yeah.
but it doesn't really bring the point across why it is. I don't know. It's just. Um, I always point to people, educate yourself, like really go deeper, like try to understand it. Don't try to make money with it. Try to understand it. I always try to make them realize that could be the biggest financial revolution ever. And if you
Hmm.
think that even has a 5% chance of being true, maybe you should research that. Maybe you should not miss out on that. So please make like a Sunday evening free and at least watch like 3, 4 podcasts and do some research, or go ahead and read those 2 books. And the worst case situation here is you get out a little bit more educated and you lost a few hours. So and the best case scenario is like, now what the biggest financial revolution is, and how it's happening and stuff like that. So I always point again to education, and I'm really passive now with orange pilling people. I don't want to, because I have seen it where I said like, yeah, like it's a great buy now, and then it went down half a month later, and then they're upset, and so like I'm really defensive now and say like, oh, I don't know, like you can sell some. I buy them for you. Like if you sell at the right prices, I would buy from you. It's okay for me. My only advice is always like, just educate yourself. Like don't miss out on the educational side of Bitcoin.
Yeah, yeah, and there's no excuse for not being educated. Like the thing that I point to people, if they're like, well, where should I learn more? Is I point them to the Bitcoin Standard, which there's an audiobook version of it on YouTube that you can listen to the whole 11 odd hours in 6-ish or 5-ish. If you want to increase the speed, I'd recommend like not going too fast, because especially if it's your first listen, you probably want to catch most of it. But there's if you don't get the idea of why Bitcoin is important by the end of that, well then, good luck. I guess I don't know what to tell you. That book breaks it down so simple, and why money works the way it works and what it is. I mean, the first 2/3 of the book, I think Bitcoin is mentioned by name like once or twice. It barely even comes up. Most of it is what money is, and I think that was one of, if not the biggest eye openers for me when going down the whole rabbit hole, is understanding what money is. I mean, it's this thing that's fundamental to our everyday, and most people don't even question. I never did. It's like, oh, money comes in and I use it to buy things, but I never thought to ask, what is this stuff? And it wasn't until I realized, as far as I can tell, that Bitcoin is, or not Bitcoin, well, but all money is your time and energy turned into this thing that is holding it for you in a digital, in Bitcoin's case, or money, generally speaking, now currencies, but also in tangible cases like any, I don't know if I heard this somewhere or if I just came up with myself, probably heard it somewhere that um, all currency is money, but not all money is currency. And a lot of people don't know the difference between currencies and monies. Money is just a place where you're holding your time. Like this cup, I guess, to somebody could be money. I don't know who, but it's holding some amount of value. I drink coffee out of it nearly every day, so it's valuable to me in that regard, and I have kind of a sentimental value because of that. And like if this coffee cup were to break, I'd be a little bummed about it. Is that money? Yeah, sure. Or the various tradable cards that I have, different Magic the Gathering cards, that's money. Certainly worth more than, in some cases, more than a dollar bill, a lot more than a dollar bill in some cases, to the right person. The thing about a dollar bill or different currencies is that it's more tradable than Magic the Gathering cards. Like I can't go to many stores. I can't go to a grocery store and hand them a Magic the Gathering card. I could go to a card store and get some trade credit for it and buy the crappy snacks that they have. So I could feed myself with the Magic the Gathering cards, but not as easily as with a dollar bill. But so many people don't understand that it's so simple once you understand it. Maybe that's why in a paradoxical way why it's so difficult to understand that you take your time and energy, you get this thing for it, and this thing allows you to, the money, the currency allows you to get kind of whatever else you want. If you have enough of it, you can get pretty much anything you want. And it's going away. Every minute of every day, it is leaving in some way. And Bitcoin, and this is why Bitcoin is always a good trade, because it's not going away. It's sitting there. It just sits there and holds your time and energy. It just is what it is. Whereas any other form is deflating. Like, well, not my house. No, it is. It is. That's why the whole, oh, the value of it is going up. It's not really going up. Like your house didn't get 10% better. If anything, it probably got 10% worse. It's got mold and it's got moss on it. And it's got cracks and it probably needs some repairs. Like entropy is a real thing, except with Bitcoin. It actually, that's, which is kind of, I don't understand that one. That one kind of breaks your brain that Bitcoin defies that. It says, entropy is cool, but nah. Wait, what?
It's really, I mean, you have to make a very small investment of keeping it safe, like the harder the softer, maybe a service, maybe the investment of educating yourself or the investment of getting service or advice around it. So that's a very small cost to holding Bitcoin. And I think, was it a Nashville conference where Michael Saylor talks about that, about Bitcoin and the cost of holding it? But it's just way better because Bitcoin itself doesn't erode away. You just have to make sure that you keep it.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, your ability to hold it, your memory might erode. It probably will. So you've got to make sure you have a decent setup. But even if you forget all your seed words and you didn't put it into steel or whatever, you burn the notebook that you written it down in, it's still there. It's inaccessible for you, but it's there somewhere, just chilling, waiting to be accessed. Yeah. But
Absolutely.
as far as MSTR goes, um, I think it's going to go a lot higher. It's funny because I believe two things at once. I believe that MSTR is going to go a whole lot higher. I have no idea how high. And I also believe that it is not for me to invest because I I know no more than what I have. There's just so many. I I didn't get into Bitcoin because I really like markets and I really like understanding all the nuance about fractional reserve and options and all the stuff that Wall Street and the banking world. It's interesting to me to some degree, but it's not what I want to do with my time. I want to spend time with my family. I want to write stuff. I want to enjoy life. And to me that's a side thing. There are people out there that really like doing that stuff, and great, whatever. That's not my primary interest. And so once I found Bitcoin and kind of got it, I went, all right, cool. That's there we go. I'm kind of done. I put money into Bitcoin. It holds my time and energy, and that's it. I don't really need to do a whole lot else. I still like looking at the podcast, listening to the podcast, and hearing people talk about different things. It's generally interesting, but I'm not trying to get a deep understanding of the markets at large. And I think for most people, they just need to get that amount of understanding. Like they don't need to sit there. And I think maybe that's what they think when they hear about Bitcoin. It's like, oh, I'm going to have to spend all this time to understand it. Not really. And I think that's kind of what you were hinting at earlier with grandma giving you some Bitcoin. I think that's the world that we'll end up at is it'll be like the internet or whatever. People aren't sitting there stressing about how the internet works. When you go to type an email, it works. I don't know how long it is until we get to that point, but I think the suddenly part will happen really suddenly. People, oh, we're not the suddenly phase now. No, we're not. No, we're not. It'll be so sudden and so fast that it'll be. I think within 6 months you'll go from one world into the next, and you're like, oh, that was the suddenly phase. Ah, okay. It was when the U.S. announced that they had made their first purchase of 50,000 Bitcoin, and each quarter they were going to buy another 50,000, or I guess, yeah, 50,000, so that they get to their 200 a year. And that started, and then we saw this chain effect of other countries doing the same thing. That was the suddenly phase. Aha. Yeah.
It's super by the way, because it just fits so nicely. Yesterday's episode actually was with Parker Lewis, the author of Gradually Then Suddenly, and we went a whole hour into this topic, how suddenly it looks like. So if people want to dive deeper here, it's just yesterday's episode. But yeah, it's
what did he say on that point?
I asked him. I mean, don't want to recap the whole podcast, but the essence was like, in hindsight, it will be very obvious when the suddenly part is, and if you had to ask, is the suddenly part now here?
Yeah.
We probably are not in there yet.
Right.
So like the suddenly part will be, and he talks about different triggers of like, we are definitely in the suddenly part. If you cannot exchange your Bitcoin for, exchange your fiat for Bitcoin anymore, like if nobody wants to sell your Bitcoin for fiat, they really want to see a product or service for that.
Yeah.
And other factors.
I think that would be after the suddenly, not during.
Yeah, it's interesting because like it's also like how long is that suddenly part? Like what's the beginning? What's the end of it?
Right. Yeah.
It's like that S curve adoption, or that we also covered that exponential growth factor. If you fill a football stadium full of water, and people that listen every day on my podcast maybe get bored of that example because I brought it up like 7 times in the last 2 weeks.
I haven't heard it before.
But yeah, I will bring it up now again. You do it in 1 minute, 1 drop. The second minute, you get 2 drops. In the third minute, 4 drops. So like it's exponentially growing, 8 drops, 16 drops, 32 drops, and stuff like that. And after 45 minutes, the football stadium is actually 7% already filled. And you just need 5 more minutes to fill it 100% full. So from 7% of 100%, you go just from 45 minutes to 50 minutes. And there are a lot of different examples to see, to show how crazy exponential growth is. Like folding the paper is also an interesting one. Yeah.
Well, the one I remember from my childhood is my dad asked me, he said, would you take $1 million right now? Or if you had a penny that was doubled every day for a month, so penny, 2 cents, 4 cents, 8 cents, would you want that at the end of the month? And I don't remember what I said. I probably said, well, $1 million, right? And he's like, well, the penny would be some, I don't know. I don't remember what the math is, but it's a lot more than $1 million. I think it's multiple millions.
Absolutely, yeah. And I just thought about it. Did you see that video where people were asking on the streets in front of like a concert hall or something like that? Or do you want a Taylor Swift concert ticket or a Bitcoin? People overwhelmingly said Taylor Swift tickets, and that also tells you a little bit like we are early. Like go out there on the
Yeah.
streets, ask people. We are in a Bitcoin bubble. You're listening to podcasts, you're on Twitter, you're talking to a lot of Bitcoiners. You think we are far ahead. You think we are bigger than we actually are. No, we are very small. We are very
Yeah.
niche. We are very early.
Yeah. Yeah. The biggest thing that I run into when talking to somebody that isn't into Bitcoin is they think that Bitcoin is, they don't think that it's separate. They think that Bitcoin is the term for all of that whole space. It's like, no, 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 Bitcoin is its own thing. And so usually that's where before I even go any further, I go, okay, you got to understand that Bitcoin is not crypto. That is a phrase, or that's a word to describe all of that whole nonsense, sure. And you could put Bitcoin under that umbrella. It is a cryptocurrency, yes, but it is also, it's completely separate from all that. So I try to break that down, and I'm hoping all those shit coins go away within. I don't think they're going to go away for a little while, but boy, I hope the sooner the better.
On that note, recently someone brought it up to me. Do you think MicroStrategy might be a similar distraction from Bitcoin as it was in the past with altcoins? Like in the past, people were obsessed with altcoins to get more Bitcoin, and now they kind of are distracted by MicroStrategy. They want to get into MicroStrategy to then make more Bitcoin. Do you think MicroStrategy might be a distraction to Bitcoin hodlers to diversify or get more risk involved with MicroStrategy?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things there, and I've definitely felt one of them. And I think part of it is FOMO. Like when you hear about, who hasn't heard a story about some stock, Amazon and Microsoft? Oh man, if I had bought 100, you know, I had a friend that told me about Amazon back when it was first a thing, and he said that he really thought it was going to be a thing. Do you know that if I had put $1,000 into that, it would have, like, I put my $1,000. I remember it clear as day. I got a bonus. It was just shy of $1,000. It was $997, and I put it into Toys R Us because I thought Toys R Us was gonna really be the next. I thought all these toys and the way video games were going, I thought that was a thing. And if I put that $1,000 into Amazon instead of Toys R Us, I'd be a multimillionaire today. Like everybody's got some friend or some story about that. Do you know if I'd bought that house when I had the opportunity that did you know that if I did you know that if I'd bought GameStop, you know that, like, I think people hear about these things with MSTR and they're like, oh, if I only I'd bought back when this, and it's the same thing with Bitcoin. If only I'd bought back. But the thing with all of those is that Bitcoin stands alone is in that you can buy today and it's still going to go up. Are the other ones going to go up? I don't know. I don't know. Is MSTR going to go up? Well, given that their whole base layer is Bitcoin, it seems like it. I don't know, but I do know that being globally accepted, that Bitcoin really seems like it's going to keep on going up, but not for the reasons that people seem to think about. But as far as a distraction, yeah, I I I I, I really think that Odell's strategy is the best. Stay humble and stack sats. Like I don't think that there has been a investment strategy that beats that one for the masses. I guess there are going to be individuals that find some opportunity with MSTR, and they're going to post about it on Wall Street Bets, or they're going to post about it on Twitter. It's like, oh, I did this thing, and everybody else will see that. I'm like, ah, man, oh, why didn't I think of that thing? What I'm curious about and interested to see, and I, so it seems like whenever something like GameStop or MSTR happens, people think that that's the last one, and I missed it. I missed it. If only I'd been there for GameStop when it was popping off. I could be worth so much money now. If only I'd been there when I'd gotten into MSTR 4 years ago. But the thing is that there's gonna be some other company that comes along. There's gonna be some other company that does what MSTR is doing with something else. They'll start buying. I mean, hell, Rumble's doing it. They just announced that they're gonna start adding their 20 million or something to Bitcoin treasury asset. So some other company is going to come out here and do something interesting with Bitcoin. Is it going to be are they going to have as much Bitcoin as MicroStrategy? No, I don't think that's going to be beaten, but they don't have to have crazy gains. Like I'm looking forward to some company that does something with video games on top of Bitcoin. They have their own in-game system, and then you can cash out and get Bitcoin for it. And there's going to be so many different interesting things that happen on Bitcoin that there's going to be other opportunities to, if that's what you're interested in, to make a ton of money. And so sitting here and FOMOing and crying about MSTR, I definitely think is a distraction. Like I put this tweet out here, and I'm certainly not the first one to say this kind of thing, but you probably don't need to listen to another podcast about why Bitcoin's a good idea. You probably don't. You could probably spend that time reading a book or going on a walk or doing basically anything else, like picking your nose, get that thing nice and clean. Like, do you really need to listen to another podcast? I mean, I know I'm on a podcast right here talking to a guy who does podcasts for a living, but I mean, honestly, like, how many podcasts do we need to hear with Jeff? Like, I stopped listening to most of the major people because I've heard Jeff Booth say the same exact thing 300 times now. Like I could go and put a Jeff Booth mask on and do a Jeff Booth impersonation. It's probably going to be pretty close. Like I don't need to listen to him say the same thing again. And most people, I think we just want the reminder of, am I crazy? Well, you might be, but as far as Bitcoin goes, I don't think so. But yeah, to answer your question, I do think that MSTR for most people probably is a distraction. Like just focus on the things that you're really interested in, aside from the markets, and stack sats and just chill, man.
100%. That's just, by the way, that's also one major reason why I don't want to have all the big ones all over again. That's why in under 1 year, I have 312 guests on, different ones, like 312 different guests, not like repeated ones. And that's seems to be also really popular with people. I have episodes with people that have not even a social media account with over 10,000 views on YouTube. So you don't need a big name to gather views. And that was a huge insight for me, because I thought that's the case. You need the big names. No, you just need like interesting content. You just need like to have like an interesting conversation. And people seem to be way more interested in that, because most people that listen to that podcast probably know what Jeff Booth and Michael Saylor will say, but they never heard a random science teacher talk about Bitcoin. They never heard someone else. So that's really interesting. And also what I've seen, you can talk about anything. I made with Lisa Huff a whole episode, and I bring that example up a lot, but I made a whole episode with her about parenting. We mentioned Bitcoin maybe 3 times in 1 hour. So that's great, where you can just talk like in different topics also. But I do agree. I think for me it's way more interesting to listen to new people and people that are not on every podcast for the 10th time. But I still will interview them. Like Michael Saylor will still be next year again on my show, because it gives a bigger platform to the other people also. So I'm really big on creating that stage. But I also know people need that confirmation. If I go in a topic, and with, for example, gym, or with like diet, I sometimes listen to the same guy or the same topic 20 times, to all the arguments again and again and again. And yeah, even with political debates, before I make my mind up, I read all the programs that I listen to a debate. I'm an addict. Like I listen to like 5, 10 same debates with the same people like 5 times, and there's almost no difference. Just to make sure, like, is it should I really vote for them? I don't know. People have a weird like they really want to confirm their things and be comfortable with something, especially with Bitcoin. I also notice when the price either goes up or down, feels a little bit higher than usual. So either oh, it's going up, so let's sell now. Let's listen to a podcast.
Yeah, what's going on? What's happening?
And also one thing that I heard from some people that are really deep into Bitcoin that told me, hey, like I know it really good. Like I have all my money in there. Like I've done the research, but I still like to listen to the Bitcoin podcast because the fiat system is so around us that I like to remind myself that about this Bitcoin mindset, about the proof of work mindset. I just like to really immerse myself closer to that, even though I don't get really an information out there, but I get the energy out there from that. So that might also be a thing from people that actually listen to a lot of podcasts, because I know it because people give it to me in the comments. There are people out there that say like, "Oh, I listen to 3 Bitcoin podcasts a day," because I'm like a carpenter and I can listen to something while I do my things.
Yep.
So podcast world is crazy. I thought the podcast world is quite full already, but I was like, let's do one anyways. But I've grown mine from 0 audience to now between 50 and 100,000 people watch my podcast just on YouTube every month, where I'm like, oh, there was clearly a need for that. The free market clearly showed that I was wrong, that there's actually a big need for another podcast. And I think there's a need for many more Bitcoin podcasts. Just if you look at how many crypto podcasts there are, how many traditional finance guy podcasts there are, how many other podcasts there are, we actually don't have that many really successful full-time English podcasters. I mean, what Bitcoin did, if we count him, because he still does Bitcoin podcaster, there's Preston Bitch, there's Natalie Brunel, there's Bram from Bitcoin for Millennials, there are a bunch of other people, Walker from the Bitcoin podcast, so probably missed some, but yeah, it's the whole world. Like there are like 1.5 billion people that probably know English and they need Bitcoin information. I think we need like at least 10 times more Bitcoin podcasts. We need 10 times more Bitcoin books. We need way more people speaking up about it. And I encourage anyone, tell your story. And I'm gladly a stage for that. To me, every week at least 2-3 people reach out to me and that I have not even like a real social media account, say like, hey, I have this story, I want to be on your podcast. I cannot have everyone on, but most of them I say like, hey, let's talk about it, and then after we record we decide if we can publish it or not, if it was interesting enough. But yeah, like go ahead, talk about Bitcoin. I'm gladly the stage to enable that.
Yeah, I agree that I, I think it really depends on the voice. And I don't mean like the way that you sound. I mean everybody's going to bring their own unique perspective to the space. And if you dislike one person or it doesn't really mesh with you, like I don't know, this host over here, it doesn't, it's why Joe Rogan is so popular, or other people are popular, or that Hawk Tua girl, which I've never listened to a podcast. I thought when all I saw that tweeting about she's talking to this Bitcoin or that Bitcoin, I thought it was a joke. I thought people were lying about that stuff. I thought they were just kind of trying to meme this into existence. I honestly didn't know that she had a podcast. I thought that that video that she had made was the full extent of her everything. I didn't know that she was still around and relevant. Apparently she is to some people. Why? I don't know. I have no idea. But people like listening to her, and I guess she's deep into Bitcoin now or something, or crypto.
She does some crypto things and some shit coining,
Okay.
but and I think she wants to have Michael Saylor on her podcast. That would be crazy. I would definitely listen to that because I think it would be fun.
Yeah.
Could be fun, but I don't know. Like I've never listened to her other than that one video that got her popular. That I listened to, but also only the small clip because there's a long clip to that video also,
Oh, okay.
a longer clip. But yeah, I also never to listen to Talk Tour.
Yeah, but apparently there's a demand for it. I mean, clearly there's a line in Mad Max Fury Road. They're looking up. It's after they've gone across the desert and they've met with the older women out there, and they're looking up at the sky and they see a satellite. And I think it's one of the older women says everybody back then had their own show, and it reminds me of podcasts now. And you've got so many different podcasts that have the same kind of guests on. You've got the Sean Ryan podcast where you've got these Navy SEALs. You've got the Joe Rogan podcast. You've got these different 100 podcasts where they have the same general topics. Like you're gonna, you've got an idea of what you're gonna hear when you go to one of these podcasts, but you go there and you return to go or you return to this podcast or that one because you like the host, you like the way that things are presented, the way that he or she brings up topics. And I think that you're 100% right that the space can use more podcasts and handle more podcasts for sure, because there are some people that are just not going to tune into you for whatever reason. They're like, I don't know, he sounds too much like Arnold Schwarzenegger. I can't handle it, so I'm going to go and listen to this other person. All right, fine, like that's whatever. Oh, he's got that guy with the stupid hat on again and his glasses. Ugh, get out of here.
It's interesting. It's also, I mean, there are a lot of podcasts, and I know, and I looked at number up, but there are 4 million registered podcasts out there. But if you then go ahead and see how many podcasts are actually active, and I count them podcast active if it's like one episode per week, there is around 200,000, I think was the number. So there are a lot of people start a podcast and register a podcast, and then like very small amount do it in weekly. And then if you talk about how many podcasts are there actually that are serious about it, and serious, I would say, are like at least 3 episodes per week. This is like you do it on like, that's your main thing. Joe Rogan has done 3.4 on average per week for the last 15 years with 4 hours each. That's really serious.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you do like 3 with 1 hour or 2 with like 2-3 hours, that's also serious. That's a small amount of podcasts that actually out there. But yeah, they're it's a weird space because there are a lot, because you see so many, but at the same time, not that many out there. And I always like
that's
to
true
encourage.
of basically everything. Like, oh, I'm going to go and do this. I'm going to start exercising. I'm going to write a book. I'm going to learn to play banjo. I'm going to do this. And, every year you see all these gym memberships. And then a month later, like how many people are still going to the gym? Like, people start these things and they expect, like with the gym membership, that they do one run on the treadmill, lift 3 things, and they look in the mirror like, well, I didn't do anything. You got to do it a whole lot of times. Or they make one podcast with their buddy, they yuck up, they smoke some weed, eat some donuts, and have some laughs. And they're like, well, why didn't 10 million people listen to it? What? Like, you shared it with your 3 friends on Facebook. Maybe if you do this for 10 years straight and you build a rapport with each other and you have some different goofs on and you interview your weed dealer and the donut guy, like, hey, maybe you'd have something there. But you can't do it one time or even 10 times. Like, I mean, how many times was it before you were able to? I think I saw a post from you recently where you said this is your what you do for a living now. Is that right?
Yeah, I basically, just to quickly summarize that story, I was starting almost exactly a year ago on 28th of November last year. So it's almost now, it's 2 days more and it's exactly a year how
Okay.
I do it now. And I started back then just as, I had a full-time job. I had no thrive to do it full-time with the podcast. I had a full-time IT security job. And I just started as like, let's also have a podcast, because I was talking to Bitcoiners anyways online, actually,
I see.
over Google Meet or something like that. And then I was like, let's record those episodes. But then my obsessive mind started coming in and was like, oh, let's make a calendar and let's write all those people. And then all of a sudden I had that guest list, and all of a sudden I had a podcast going. And then like sponsors were approaching me and saying like, hey, can we sponsor you, because it's a nice podcast. And I was like, okay. And then this from November till February was a small progression. Then I had like a few thousand people listening to me every month. Not big, but also not nothing. And then I had a small sponsorship going on, and I was like, okay, I have momentum, I have a sponsorship, I have revenue. Let's just quit my job that I was really happy with,
Mm.
that I was there for 6 years, and jump into that podcasting thing. Out of the blue, I had no clue what I was doing. Honestly, in hindsight, it went really good, but in hindsight, it was also really dumb. It was an emotional decision. It was just like, yeah, let's just do it. Like in
Mm-hmm.
hindsight, it was really good. Like financially, even financially it paid off, but also freedom wise it paid off. But if you look actually at the facts, logically, I should not have done it.
I mean, that's the story every time, right? I mean, how often have people like, I took this risk and it was like on all like, well, it wasn't really a risk. Like if on every level it made sense, then it wasn't really a risk. It just that was the obvious thing to do. It's like,
Absolutely, yeah, and it is also a crazy experience because you all of a sudden don't have that security. I was in the
yeah,
job for over 6 years, so that this was like a really big security, and then all
right,
of a sudden income to zero or
yep,
almost zero, and yeah, like a few months ago, I think 2 months ago it was, where I hit the amount I make now more than I made before with my job,
okay,
which was crazy for me. I mean,
yeah,
if you
yeah,
look at an hourly basis, I make less because I work so much more than
right,
before.
yeah,
But on like a full basis, it's great. I never had problems all with paying my bills over that period of time. I never had to. I was prepared for 2 years to live off my Bitcoin savings. I was like, fuck it, I will just do it.
mm.
But I never had to do that actually, which
Why was it
surprised
worth
me
it to you
actually.
to do that? Why were you willing to dip into your Bitcoin savings to make this a thing happen when you had, I mean, it sounds like you haven't mentioned your job in a negative light. Did you dislike it? Were there
Absolutely
aspects that,
not. That like that. That's why it was so hard because I liked what I was doing.
and you like the people?
I like the people. I like what was it doing. The only thing I did not like is IT security. IT security
Mm,
was not my thing. I was not passionate
gotcha.
about it, but the job was good and everything like that. So if it would be Bitcoin, I would still be working there. Probably there would have never been a podcast if that company would have done Bitcoin. But I really, there was this one clip and it just like triggered me and it never went out of my head. And he said something like, "You can fail at something that you don't like, so why not take the chance on something you like?"
Mm,
And it made like it was a nice story. I have no clue who was in the clip even, but it was like a very short clip on I think YouTube or something like that, and it stuck with me. And then I got that opportunity, and I was like maybe I should just try it. Like it was not a logical decision; it was just an emotional thing where I'm like, oh, like that could turn into something. And also, there's like this green grass thing. If you see the podcasting world and you come home and you do the podcast and you really like it, you're like, oh, that feels really good. Like I just talked to Jeff Booth, like how amazing was that?
yeah, yeah.
And you see the green grass over at the neighbors, all of a sudden the grass that is with you, all of a sudden like I don't know, maybe I don't like it that much. And then the jump is easier. But yeah, it was a really hard decision because I was happy with what I have. I definitely had the goal of making some money with my social media because I
Mm,
was like, I put in 2023 at least 2 hours every day into Twitter,
mm.
growing it from like 200 followers to 7,000. Now I'm like almost at 17,000. So I put uh, a lot of hours in there, and I did not get a single Satoshi for that last year. So I had this as a goal for mine to make some money with that.
Mm.
And I had even numbers for that for the end of the year. I blew them completely out of the way,
Is
obviously,
this
because I did it full
from
time
the
now.
revenue thing that Twitter now pays out? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, but this is a small, like, this was my goal of like making it with that, but that doesn't pay well. I think I get from Twitter, what is it? 30 or $40 per 2 weeks. So maybe
So
if
what
it comes
are you
high,
talking about through
$100.
YouTube, or what? Where are you talking about the goal that you had from where?
The goal was that I blow up my Twitter ad revenue.
Oh, I see. The numbers, the followers that you had.
Yeah.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
I see.
So that was the goal. And I didn't get the revenue from Twitter that I hoped for, but I got it from like sponsorships and from YouTube ad revenue.
I see. Gotcha.
But yeah, was amazing to talk to you again. I slowly have to end the podcast because I just realized I have in 15 minutes a next recording.
Okay. How many do you do in a day?
Usually one or two maximum.
Okay.
But right now I'm just so much traveling, conferences and with the family that I do today free. And that's my maximum. Two, I like two the most.
Gotcha.
Two with like half an hour in between is the best, because the first is like really nice. You ramp up your energy, and the second you have really good energy. And with the third, it's similar than the first. 4 is too much. Never do 4 podcasts. You're just like, your brain is not working anymore.
Yeah.
Like 4 is too much. It's you are fried. You're like, I don't want anymore. But yeah, 3 is okay. You're my first today.
Okay. All right. I'm the warm-up session.
Definitely not. Really cool. I had one more question. Maybe you can answer that quickly. Do you think MicroStrategy has a chance of being the biggest company on earth?
Sure. Yeah, it's got a chance.
Oh, nice. I also think so.
Of course.
How high is the chance?
Oh God. I 10%, 15%. Decent, but not great. And the reason I say that is because all it takes is another company to add Bitcoin to their balance sheet while continuing to do whatever they do. It's not as though I don't think that if Apple or Microsoft, like if Seyr goes and talks to Microsoft and they start adding Bitcoin to their balance sheet, that suddenly it drives the price of Bitcoin so high that it propels MicroStrategy beyond, like they just leapfrog above all these other companies. I think these other companies are still going to be valued really high because of what they're doing. It's not suddenly, oh, Microsoft is worth $3 trillion on the balance sheet, but now that they've added Bitcoin, we're going to look at them completely differently. So now they're only worth $80 billion. Like it's going to supplement what they do, but that they have these other revenue streams and are doing other things, I think it'll help them. I don't think it would hurt them. So it would just boost them. It'd be like rocket fuel onto or I don't know, like Fast and the Furious hitting the NOS button, I think. And so that still keeps them ahead of MicroStrategy. I think what MicroStrategy has to do to really climb up, and I don't know that they would at this point, given that their core principles, but I think they have to do something else. Like, I don't know, come out with they've got this whole software business, like come out with, they've talked about being able to send lightning payments via email. Talk to Google, integrate that with Gmail, like find a way, or make your own email app where lightning is part of it, where, hey, we offer this new, go back to the basics of Bitcoin and Adam back what he was trying to do with the payment. Come out with an email that's a competitor to Gmail that promises no spam ever again, because now you have to do this whole lightning thing. And if you want, like, come out with a competitor to that. Like, you've got a software business, you got the people there that come up with these things. You've got Bitcoin, like, make some interesting products for us.
That's a big part of it. Yeah, it's also probably like the longer CEOs don't get what Bitcoin is, the higher the chance of MicroStrategy actually being the biggest one is. So like Michael Saylor has an incentive to shut up about Bitcoin.
Yeah, if that's his goal, I don't know that his goal is to be the biggest company. Maybe it is. I don't know. Like, my brother asked me, he said, "Oh, what do you think Saylor's goal is? 1,000,000 Bitcoin?" And I haven't responded to it yet, but I was thinking, I don't think he has a number. I think it's just as much as I can possibly get until it's beyond the capability of, like, if I can keep on raising money and selling these different bonds and things to Wall Street to buy more Bitcoin, I'm just going to keep on doing that in perpetuity. Like, I don't think there's a number where he goes, all right, there we go, we made it, that's it, stop. I don't see that happening.
I think I think he said that in the first couple of interviews where he got that FOMO all of the sudden of like, oh, like every company will figure that out really quickly now.
Yeah.
So I think he is already surprised by how many Bitcoin he was able to accumulate. I think he's really surprised how big the number got. If you would have asked him in the beginning, oh, how many Bitcoin do you think you can accumulate? I think he would have never said like such a huge amount of number. So maybe he can get to the million, but it will be a hard way. Like it's a long way from 300,000 or something like that he has to like a million. That needs some fiat games he has to do there.
Yeah, it's ever harder every day.
Absolutely. Perfect. Then we have one question that asks each and every one of my guests, what can we learn from you besides Bitcoin?
Well, I mentioned that I wanted to write a book the last time I was on here, and I had this whole book thought out, but it was the world was looking down the barrel of a shotgun at the time, as far as I could tell. It was a very different feeling. We didn't know what was going to happen, at least in the US, as far as the election. Things felt a lot darker then. And at least it depends on who you talk to these days, but for them, it feels a lot darker. But for me, it feels a lot brighter. For Bitcoiners, it feels a lot brighter, I think. And I've started it. I've actually wrote the opening twice now, but it'll probably be another time. But I'm writing a fiction book. It's a fictionalized story of my life and my wife and how we found Bitcoin and how we didn't have a whole lot of hope. I wouldn't say we were nihilists by any means, but it was just sort of like, well, this is our lot in life. We're going to be relatively not poor, not destitute, not homeless, but not wealthy, like lower middle class, I guess, certainly on the low end of that. And this is our lot in life. And I guess we're just going to kind of make the best of it as we can. And that does not include a family. It does not include children. But then after finding Bitcoin, all of that changed. And we decided that we would try to have children. And it is because of Bitcoin that happened. And so it's a story with the core of it is hope, and like Bitcoin and change can change your entire perspective. So if you want to read that'll come. I don't know how I'm going to publish it. I don't know what that's going to look like, because writing a book arguably is the easiest part of getting a book done. The hardest part is all of the other stuff that comes after, like finding an editor, finding this and that. That's not free. All of that costs money, like a lot of money, like thousands of dollars money. It is not inexpensive to just get your book out there, and that hoping that it turns a profit as well. Yeah, okay, good luck with that. So it's one of those things where you hope it does. Like I would hope that it breaks even, but yeah, I have my own podcast channel. I'm sorry, it's not a podcast. It's just like me random rants that I do when I have a thought. It's got 120 subscribers. If it had less, I would be happy. Like I'm not trying to do anything with it other than share thoughts. It's more of a therapy for me. Like, oh, I have a thought, I'm just going to rant for a bit. So if somebody wants to ask a question and hear me explain it through my own wackadoo way, then yeah, you can check out. It's just my name.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and you still do the question thing for the next guest?
Yes, I still do that. So your like the last question, last guest even gave me an optionality of different questions, which was really, I think, the first time ever someone did that.
Okay.
And the most interesting one out of those three questions he gave me was, what year do you think will be the first international oil trade settled in Bitcoin? Very specific.
Yeah. I don't even know enough about that to answer that. I 2027.
Maybe.
Sure. I have nothing to back that. I've got no reason besides that's a date in the future.
The other question was, I will just ask that, bits or sats?
Oh, sats. The whole bits thing. I mean, maybe eventually when we start using it as a currency, and you want it, and I think there will be others, just like you have 10 cents and 5 cents, like dollars and $5, $10. But sure, maybe, but no, sats.
Perfect. Yeah. Thank you so much, Delio. Before I let you go, where can people? You already talked about your YouTube channel. Like, there's the best ways to reach out to you. Do you also have a Twitter? Or
yeah, I've got a Twitter. It's all my name. I have a unique enough name where haven't ever run into a place where I couldn't use my name, and it's just that. So yeah, it's my name on Twitter. It's my name on YouTube.
That's really nice. Yeah, it's really cool. It's also with my name. If you put in my name in Google, the first like 50, 100 results are all mine, which is really, really a luxury these days.
It is, yeah.
Thank you so much.
Feel bad for all the John Smiths out there. Good luck.
Thank you so much, Del, for being on. Thank you so much also for everyone that's watching and listening, for joining us today. As always, I'll be back tomorrow with another episode. Bye-bye.